Ghostly tales, yet mirrors of human life. Hey, everyone! Welcome to Encountering Chinese. Ghostly Tales from Zhai. Today, I'm going to tell you a story called Mr. Who. In the direct administration region, there was a wealthy family looking to hire a teacher. One day, a scholar unexpectedly presented himself for the position. The host welcomed him into the house and found the scholar to be articulate and pleasant to talk to. They enjoyed each other's company, and the scholar introduced himself as Mr. Who. The host decided to hire Mr. Who as the family's teacher. Mr. Who was diligent in his teaching, possessing extensive knowledge and not fitting the stereotype of an ordinary scholar. However, he often went on excursions, sometimes returning well into the night. Even though the host's house was securely locked, there was no sound of him knocking on the door. He would simply appear inside. The host was astonished, suspecting that Mr. Who might be a fox. Despite his peculiar behavior, the host observed that Mr. Who harbored no ill intentions. Consequently, Mr. Who continued to receive generous treatment without any breach of etiquette. Mr. Who learned that the host had a daughter and proposed marriage to the host. He hinted at his intentions multiple times, but the host pretended not to understand. One day, Mr. Who asked for permission to leave. The next day, a stranger came to visit. The visitor tethered a black donkey at the door, and the host invited him inside. The guest, a man in his 50s, was neatly dressed and displayed a calm and refined demeanor. After seating himself, the guest explained his purpose, revealing that he was a matchmaker for Mr. Who. Upon learning this, the host remained silent for a while before finally saying to the guest, "Mr. Who and I are already close friends. Why insist on a marriage alliance? Moreover, my daughter has already promised to someone else. Please convey my apologies to Mr. Who on my behalf." The guest replied, "I am aware that your daughter is still awaiting her betrothal. Why persist in rejecting this proposal?" Despite the guest's repeated pleas, the host refused. Annoyed, the guest said, "Mr. Who also comes from a reputable family. Is he not good enough for you?" The host, feeling helpless, confessed, "I don't have any other objections. I just dislike that he is not a human." The guest, upon hearing this, became furious, and the host also grew very angry. The two of them began to insult each other, and the situation escalated. The guest attempted to grab the host, but the host ordered his servants to drive him away with wooden sticks. The guest fled, leaving the donkey behind. Upon closer inspection, the host realized the donkey was covered in black fur, had pointed ears and a long tail, a colossal creature. However, the servants couldn't lead it, and when someone tried to push it, the donkey collapsed, transforming into a chirping grasshopper. Upon hearing the angry words from the guest, the host realized they might return for revenge, so he instructed his servants to strengthen their defenses. Sure enough, the next day, a large group of fox soldiers stormed into his home. These fox soldiers included cavalry and infantry, some wielding spears and others drawing bows, creating a tumultuous scene with shouts and neighs. Terrified, the host dared not leave his house. The fox soldiers outside threatened to burn down the house, intensifying the host's fear. A brave servant, leading others, courageously rushed out, hurling stones and shooting arrows. A fierce battle ensued, with casualties on both sides. Before long, the fox soldiers began to retreat, leaving their war knives on the ground, shining like frost and snow. The servants approached and discovered that the war knives had transformed into sorghum leaves. People laughed and said, "The capabilities of these fox soldiers are limited." Nevertheless, they remained vigilant in case the fox soldiers returned. The next day, as the host and his servants were discussing the situation, a giant suddenly descended from the sky. The giant was over 10 feet tall and several feet wide, brandishing a massive knife like a door, chasing after people to strike them. The servants fought back with stones and arrows, and the giant fell to the ground, revealing itself to be a straw man used for funeral rituals. People felt it was easy to defeat the fox soldiers. Subsequently, the fox soldiers did not return for 3 days, and the vigilance of the people relaxed slightly. One day, while the host was using the restroom, he unexpectedly saw the fox soldiers armed with bows and arrows. They fired arrows in all directions, hitting the host's buttocks. Panicked, the host urgently called for the servants to counterattack, prompting the fox soldiers to retreat. When the host pulled out the arrows from his buttocks, he discovered they were just stems of mugwort. In this way, the two sides remained in a standoff for more than a month. Although the fox soldiers came and went unpredictably and caused no significant harm, the constant vigilance left the host feeling distressed. One day, Mr. Hu led the fox soldiers to the host's residence. The host personally went out to confront them, and upon seeing him, Mr. Hu concealed himself among the fox soldiers. The host called for him to come out, and reluctantly, Mr. Hu emerged. The host said to Mr. Hu, "I have always believed that there is nothing to blame you for, sir. But why must we resort to armed conflict?" The fox soldiers prepared to shoot at the host, but Mr. Hu stopped them. The host approached, shook hands with Mr. Hu, and invited him to the original study, arranging food and wine to entertain him. The host calmly said, "Sir, you are a reasonable person, and I am sure you can understand me. With our deep friendship, how could I not be willing to become your relative? However, sir, your carriages, horses, and residence are quite different from those of humans. It would be inappropriate for my daughter to marry into your family. Moreover, there is a saying, a melon forcefully picked is not sweet. Why must you insist on this?" Mr. Hu felt ashamed, and the host continued, "Please don't be troubled, our previous relationship remains unchanged. If you don't mind us, the ordinary people of the mortal world, I have a younger son who is 15 this year and is willing to become a son-in-law in your household. Do you have a young lady at home who is a suitable match for him?" Delighted, Mr. Hu said, "I have a younger sister, 1 year younger than your son, and she is quite lovely. She can marry your son. What do you think?" After hearing this, the host stood up to express his gratitude, and Mr. Hu also bowed to thank the host. The two of them then drank and chatted, reconciling their differences. The host had his servants set up another feast to reward Mr. Hu's subordinates, and both families were joyous and content. The host intended to inquire about Mr. Hu's address in detail, planning to go there the next day to finalize the marriage arrangements. However, Mr. Hu did not reveal his address to the host. As the night grew late, they lit the lamps and continued drinking until they were heavily intoxicated. Only then did Mr. Hu leave. From that day forward, the two families lived peacefully with no further issues. After more than a year, Mr. Hu did not return. Some suspected that the promised engagement with Mr. Hu was false, but the host insisted on waiting for him. Another half-year passed, and suddenly, Mr. Hu returned. After exchanging pleasantries with the host, Mr. Hu said, "My younger sister has grown into an adult. Please choose an auspicious day and send her over to serve her parents-in-law." Delighted, the host and Mr. Hu set a wedding date and made the necessary arrangements. On the appointed night, a bridal sedan arrived, and Mr. Hu's family brought a generous dowry, nearly filling the new house. The bride paid respects to her parents-in-law, and the hosts were pleased to find her beautiful and gentle. Mr. Hu and his brother came to accompany the bride. The two brothers were eloquent and adept at drinking, staying until dawn before leaving. Unexpectedly, the new bride could predict the annual harvest, and the family began to follow her advice in managing their livelihood. In the future, the brothers and their mother often visited the bride, and everyone in the host's family got to know them. Alright. That's all for today's ghostly tale. Mr. Hu. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Please also encourage everyone to comment and share more. We'll see you in the next episode.